Welcome to Legal Innovation Spotlight, the podcast that brings you the latest advancements in legal tech and knowledge management. I'm Ted Theodoropoulos, and I connect with the industry's brightest minds to provide you with valuable insights and actionable takeaways. So sit back, relax, and let's dive in. Andrea, how are you today?
Hi, Ted. I'm fine. Thanks. How are you?
I'm doing great. I really appreciate you spending a few minutes with me today. We're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects, which is innovation and a little bit of AI and Copilot. And you and I found each other on LinkedIn. I'm not sure if we were commenting on one of the same threads, but I remember looking at your experience and background, and you are extremely innovation focused. And the name of the podcast, Legal Innovation Spotlight. So I reached out and we started to chat and had a good conversation. So real happy to have you here. And before we jump in,
thank you.
Yeah, before we jump in, looking at your LinkedIn profile, you were director of innovation in Europe for Dentons.
Yes.
You're a former CIO. You studied AI at MIT. You studied innovation at Harvard.
Yes.
Those are all really interesting credentials. But rather than me try and summarize, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and what you're doing now?
Thanks. Happy to. And basically, so how I would start is that I'm the founder of Interalia Consulting, a new advisory boutique that I funded in October. And yes, before that, I was with various law firms, altogether 25 years in the legal industry, so quite some time. In addition to the time, I think what distinguishes me a little bit the multidisciplinary experience, because most of us being in an innovation role or knowledge role, we have some legal background. So also I was a practicing lawyer with Clifford Chance and Linklaters in the early days. But maybe additionally to that, it's worth to mention that I did not only innovation, legal tech, and knowledge management, but also business development, marketing, and training management at a regional firm here in Central and Eastern Europe, Wolf Ties. And then, as you mentioned, so in addition to this practical experience, I like to learn. So continuous learning, or the love of learning, is also what is kind of I share about myself. And in addition to my law degree, I have an MBA, and then I have various courses. You mentioned the Harvard one on disruptive strategy. I did in 2017, and the latest big one was an MIT Sloan kind of course on the strategic impact of AI, or how AI impacts the business strategy of companies in general. Yeah, maybe one last thing to mention, probably the highlight of those 25 years was when I was shortlisted in 2022 October to the FT, the Financial Times Innovative Lawyers Award here in Europe in the I think it's called a Changemaker category. So already being shortlisted was a nice thing. Maybe next time I will.
Nice. Absolutely. Well, and when you and I spoke last, we talked about the difference in, I don't know if you want to call it momentum, but Europe seems to have a big focus on innovation. And, it sounded like from your perspective, London is the epicenter for legal innovation globally. And we talked a little bit about kind of the reasons for that, but did I understand correctly that in terms of legal innovation that London is kind of the epicenter? And if that's the case, why?
Yeah, definitely. I think London has a pioneering role globally, and there are many good things happening in Canada, US, also continental Europe, Singapore, Australia for sure. But I think what is happening in London is they are always ahead of the game. And there might be various reasons for that, or there are various reasons. I would like to emphasize three things that I consider, or I have seen playing an important role. And the first thing that I think we have to go back in time, and there was a regulation in 2007 in the UK which liberalized or partly liberalized the legal market, the Legal Services Act. And that was a catalyst for the law firms to start think about how to innovate. In most countries, on most legal markets, the question who is allowed to provide legal advice, it's still very much regulated, very restrictive. So opening up the markets is something which generates innovation or basically strengthens the innovation, and we have seen that in the UK. And also, of course, that was kind of one point in time, 2007. All other related happenings, like 2008, the book by Richard Susskind, The End of Lawyers, was also something which helped this wave to start. So that the regulation is one thing I would emphasize. Then I observed a few managing partners in the last 15, 20 years who really were visionary. And their roles were not only visionary or impactful for their particular law firms, but they were also very, very impactful as leaders or thought leaders and visionary leaders for the entire industry. So, for example, David Morley from Allen & Overy, former managing partner, was such a very influential managing partner, driving the Allen & Overy, but also showing to the market what is the thinking, where is the journey heading. Then Neville Eisenberg, that time he was with Berney Layton Paisners, the law firm which is nowadays called BCRP. He was also very open and experimental. Then Kevin Gold, Mishkondereya, I think he's still leading the firm. So these, and sorry, also probably a couple of other names that I don't have now. But I think leadership is always important for innovation. But I think there we have to mention a couple of names who had a broader impact. And so apart from the regulatory liberalization or partly liberalization effect and leadership, visionary thinkers, I would also emphasize the different incentive and remuneration models which exist typically in the UK, in London firms, and typically certain other parts of the firms, for example, the US. And this understanding the remuneration model is important, because at the end of the day, partners will follow how they are incentivized. And if they are working in a firm which is a lockstep firm, that is a typical model in the UK, that means they are building a firm year by year. It's a quite regulated advancement, and they are basically building together the company, the law firm. And on the very end of that spectrum is the merit-based model, the eat what you kill, as some people call it, where your personal incentives are based only or mainly on the revenue that you basically get or that you can acquire, and so on. So basically, we have to look at these incentive systems to understand how partners are motivated and whether it's in their motivational pattern to build, to invest in the firm, to advance the firm as a whole, or focus on their own practice. So I think these three I would mention: the regulatory, the leadership, and the incentive model, that I think you always have to look at in every market, or also at individual law firms, if you would like to understand innovation.
Yeah, and that kind of lone wolf, eat what you kill mentality is prominent, and
yeah.
It even I know many firms have goals and ways to classify innovation hours or KM or whatever, but what we see as vendors. So I've been working in this space for 15 years, and I've seen inside more than half the AM law, probably 100 at this point, 110, 120 of the AM law 200. And I see it's evident that there's a struggle to get attorneys, especially the rainmakers, the high billers, to take the time to even profile documents, to keep their CRM contacts up to date. It's and I think that's going to create a struggle with any sort of innovation initiative. But now, especially with AI coming down the pike, all those systems where the data is incomplete or poorly managed is now going to come back and has to be cleaned up. And another dynamic is just the massive amount of M&A. So many firms have gotten gobbled up, and what we've seen is those systems have been very poorly integrated or transitioned, and they've kind of been slapped together. And that's not unique to legal. I spent 10 years in financial services, and at Bank of America. Bank of America was and still is very much a conglomerate of banks that it just consumed. And when I left in whatever it was, 2008-ish, there were 3 main banking platforms, depending on where you lived in the country. And so it's not unique to legal, but I think law firms really suffer from that lone wolf mentality. And it sounds like, from your perspective, the UK market has done some things to mitigate that. Is that accurate?
Yes. Absolutely. And I understand those partners who are incentivized in one way, and they ask, like, what is it in for me? Why should I do X, Y, Z if I'm expressing this simply, if I'm being paid for something else? So there is also this saying, you get what you pay for. If you pay for client matters, revenue generated, then this is what you will get. And yes, you can have the innovation hours and the non-billable targets, but we know that rainmakers, who are really the backbone of firms, they have a good case to say, like, why they haven't had time for this or that, or why they haven't done this and that. And you are absolutely right that in the last couple of years, the lack of integrated infrastructure, especially lack of integrated document infrastructure, data, was okay, because especially in those firms where people were focused on their own practices, they knew where their documents are, and that's it. But people say harness the power of AI. I think it's harness the power of your data, which actually should be said. And if you don't know where this data lies, if you don't have a good information architecture, data governance, document management systems with quality data and guardrails and so on, then it will be really difficult to keep up. There is also this saying invented, by the way, by someone who is in the UK, kind of a thought leader: IA before AI, information architecture before artificial intelligence.
Oh, I like that.
So we will see.
IA before AI. That's so good. And yeah, the reality is IA is really hard to manage after the fact. Once and we've got years and we've got decades of poorly classified, poorly structured data sets that are now going to have to be, hopefully, I think that's where the big opportunity in AI is, honestly, within the legal context, is helping reduce time that timekeepers have to spend classifying documents, and helping clean up all that mess. I mean, another kind of challenge is many of these legal systems like Elite and Aderant Expert, they can be customized and I just had the CEO on a few days ago of Elite, and I mentioned this to him as well, and he didn't disagree. It's when things were on-prem, which they still largely are in the practice management world, they're moving to the cloud, but there were opportunities to customize and bastardize those systems to the point where I've seen firms that literally could not get enterprise search to work because there were so many user-defined, so many exception things. It was just really, really difficult to get systems to work. And now those chickens are coming home to roost because it's going to be really difficult to layer AI on top of that.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. Mm-hmm.
your comments about lockstep, like so that compensation model is very different than the US compensation model that is capitalist. In this global world that we live in, like how do firms that embrace a lockstep comp model compete, especially for those rainmakers that could go to a different firm and make, several times the money? How does that happen?
That's a very good question, Ted, because actually we are saying that this tension on the UK market and also coming to continental Europe, that those traditional poorly lockstep law firms started to modify a little bit their incentive system. So you hear the expression modified lockstep. They introduce special bonuses for this and that. Because they have to stay competitive to the American firms who the last couple of years came over, established or grown their London presence and offering the good old eat what you kill or a kind of variation of that, and that's then certainly very attractive to the rainmakers. So it's nice to say whether maybe the lockstep is better for innovation, but in the reality, the lockstep also has challenges. So if you are a managing partner, it's not so easy to decide, okay, well, we do this and or that, or we stick to lockstep because that's better for innovation or kind of long-term development of the firm.
Yeah, what's better for clients? Obviously, innovation is good for clients, but lockstep versus the merit-based compensation model, like how do outcomes differ in those two scenarios for clients?
I'm not aware of any studies in connection with this, although this is a very interesting question. But I would argue that for a client, certainly the benefit of a lockstep system is that collaboration is true. So if I am a partner at my certain point, 65 points, and I'm interested in, like, my incentive depends on the overall success of the firm, it's my interest to bring in the other colleagues, the experts, maybe the best experts within my firm. And so I can make collaboration, smart collaboration happen, as Heidi Gardner, a Harvard scholar, described. The more multidisciplinary experts are involved in a matter, the higher the fees you can charge are, because clients value that. They value the expertise. Of course, you can also argue that in a merit-based firm, there is even more focus on the client, like everything for that client. This is my client. I'm going the extra mile and beyond for that client. That certainly that also has advantages.
So how much you and I talked about the concept of innovation theater, and that concept is alive and well in the US. And I think there are just inherent mindset paradigms that create friction to innovation. And it's hard to tell a room full of millionaires that they're doing it wrong, right? It's been very lucrative, but in the U.S., I've talked about this extensively on the podcast with other guests. I having been around for a while, and I have seen KM departments just given new innovation titles, and I don't really know if the work has changed or we're using the word innovation to look innovative. Is that so? It's alive and well in the U.S. What about in Europe and elsewhere globally? Is that also a dynamic that's prevalent?
I would say that you can find innovation theater everywhere. So that's and that's also again I understand it because it's very differentiate. Sorry, it's very difficult to differentiate between law firms. So law firms are always looking for something that they can tell, a story that they can tell, because they keep saying like we are the best, we have the highest quality, we are client focused, but actually everybody says that. If you look at the website of a law firm and you take a text, it could be used by anyone, any other competitor. So I'm exaggerating a little bit, but so many firms use these initiatives or the topic of innovation and they try to create stories. And in some cases, maybe they also have the original kind of idea and willingness to do something also in practice, tangible, which then lands on the table of the lawyers and then on the table of the clients. But in many cases, it is a pilot, it is an idea, it gets publicity, and then it dies. So I'm not saying these innovation theater pieces are designed for the press release. It's just in many cases they are used. Oh wow, we have a story, fantastic. Let's put it out. But then for various reasons, the initiative slowly dies or is being cut quickly.
Yeah. And where do you see this is I'm actually moderating a session at a conference next month in New York, and the topic is about how AI and innovation affect organizational design within law firms. And one thing I found very interesting is the diversity through which law firms deploy innovation teams organizationally. And, some innovation teams are independent. You have a CHINO, a chief innovation officer. You have a chief knowledge officer. Sometimes you have those roles combined. Sometimes innovation rolls up to knowledge. What are there any best practices? And is that true in Europe? Is it because it's all over the board in the U.S.? I mean, there are literally, I would say, almost evenly distributed. I see just as many standalone innovation teams as I do CKIO roles and having them combined. What about in Europe?
Yeah. I think here we have more combined teams or teams that might have, yeah, but they work really closely. The reason being is that at least in continental Europe, the majority of the so-called innovation projects are rather transformation projects and automation projects, document automation, process automation. So as soon as you talk about document automation, whether it's a transformation project, so truly internal effect, or maybe you do a client-facing document automation project or series of projects, you land with the knowledge team who have traditionally created those templates and so on. And also now when we talk about AI, which people say, okay, it's innovation, but as soon as you talk about, okay, so where is our data? How can we combine the models with our existing data, either for retrieval augmented generation or maybe for fine-tuning? Again, you land at the knowledge team, or you rely on the knowledge management infrastructure in connection with legal documents. I think most of also in London, most of these teams have it's a team reporting rather to the management, not to IT or not to business development. So it's a unique team. But on the other hand, I think it's really important that they are connected not only to these teams, IT for obvious reasons, but also BD, but also to the practice. And so one interesting question that I thought a lot about, and it relates to your point about organizational design as well. What skills do you want, or what background do you want your innovation team to have? And there are different views. I'm a strong believer that, especially if you think about those transformation part, digital transformation part of these activities, is that you can't change, you can't transform, you can't innovate something that you don't understand. So in my practice, I always looked for so-called legal engineers or had legal project managers in the team, legal background, they understand the processes, basically also how lawyers think, and then can apply methodologies like project management or design thinking or technology to those projects. So I think this bridge role between, for example, AI and legal, or technology and legal, this bridge role requires a good understanding of both domains.
I see pros and cons for both. I think you could make a good argument for many different organizational models, and that's probably why you see so much variation. For example, innovation teams should be failing a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Innovation requires failure. If you're not failing, you're not innovating. That's not the case in KM, right? Failure is not really embraced and necessary. And I feel like leaders of innovation teams should be evaluated on the number of failures they have, right? Just as much as the number of successes. Because if you're really pushing the envelope and you're really trying to innovate, it's not going to work every time. If you're playing it safe and, then you can have a pretty high batting average. So for those reasons, I see having them separate make some sense. But to your point, there's also a really good argument. You have to understand the processes and the mindset. And so I feel like a good argument for, potentially bringing them together. I'm not sure what way is going to win out. What's most prevalent in Europe, or is it all over the board like the US?
I think it's more like these teams are together. Or even I know a very strong Spanish firm where they don't have an innovation leader. There is a knowledge leader who, for example, is leading the AI project. I think I understand that if you are thinking about innovation in terms of like new products, maybe tech products, completely standalone solutions for clients. So that type of classic innovation, yes, you have to try and fail and test and iterate and so on. If you are again on the kind of transformation, so transforming how lawyers work, innovating the processes, so not product innovation, but process innovation, there I would be a bit more cautious with failing, because their partners would not be happy if you fail to. So there you must be cautious. But kind of the product innovation side, yes, that's more like trying, iterating, and then either going with the product to the market or killing the project. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have a background in Lean Six Sigma, so I'm a Lean Six Sigma black belt, and during there are a few different models within that discipline. So Lean and Six Sigma are not the same. Those words get combined. Lean is about efficiency. Six Sigma is about defect reduction, right? So there are really three kinds of projects. You have a Lean project, which is about efficiency. You have what's called a DFSS, a design for Six Sigma. So that's what you talk about, a completely new process. And then you have an improvement project. So improvement is transformation, iterating on existing processes. So yeah, I'm familiar with those models. I'm actually, are there any firms in Europe that leverage Lean or Six Sigma? There have been a few in the US, but it's not really gained a lot of traction. What about in other areas globally?
I know about a few firms who experimented with it in London, but it was not a big topic. It hasn't been a big topic over
Yeah.
here, which is a pity because you are right, Ted. So when I say okay, let's have legal engineers, legal designers, legal whatsoever, because they understand the domain legal. But on the other hand, bringing people from the outside world with these concepts, with really tested change management experience, that would benefit a lot. Because sometimes on LinkedIn, you mentioned we met on LinkedIn, sometimes on LinkedIn there is this kind of collective bashing of lawyers that they don't change. And yes, it's a conservative industry, but sometimes I ask, like, are we innovation leaders? Are we effective enough, or are we good enough? Maybe we are coming from our legal background where we got used to saying something to the client, and the client would follow our advice. And we are used to arguing logical, like on a logical, rational way, kind of left brain thinking. And we know that change happens with your right part, right brain thinking, and it's more about story, and it's more about emotions, and it's more about communication and over communication. So I think probably the best is to have a mixed team that
Agreed.
combines
Yeah,
the best of all in the world.
yeah, when I look at some of the firms who I admire, who seem to be doing it right, I see people from other industries that have been brought into the organization and brought new ideas. But yeah, you need I think you need a combination of both, um, which is a good transition. I wanted to talk a little bit about Copilot and AI, which I think law firms. I got a rude awakening with that Goldman study that said whatever it was, 45% of legal tasks can be automated by AI. I think that was a real awakening. And I think that I think it has created a paradigm shift on behalf of law firm leadership. If people, I've been challenged before when I've said, yeah, legal is not an innovative industry as a whole. There are pockets of innovation, and I've been challenged to provide data on that. Well, I have data, and one metric I think you could look at is look at the percentage of revenue spent on technology. Financial services is in the low teens, and legal is in the low single digits. I think that's an indicator of innovation. It's really hard to have innovation that doesn't embrace technology in some capacity. It's not impossible. You can innovate processes. Again, we were trained to do that in Six Sigma, but technology is a necessary ingredient. And but AI has really, I feel like, shaken the foundation of some preconceptions and some tendencies. And I feel like the industry has taken notice, and they're starting to reevaluate their position on technology. And is that true from your perspective as well?
Yeah, absolutely, Tad. So I like to call that it was a wake-up call, not necessarily only in connection with AI, but in general, innovation technology. And you mentioned the Goldman Sachs study. I think also that study by Dan Katz and Mike Bomarito and others about GPT passing the bar exam was kind of heard by many lawyers, but also here in Europe, Allen & Overy has a strong brand here. So when they announced on the 15th of February, I think last year, that they cooperate with Harvey, or they have implemented Harvey, and now everybody is using AI. That was also kind of shaking the waves, or kind of traveling the news in law firms. So all in all, I think, yes, we do have a momentum, and I also like to say that this is not only it's not only about, okay, do I use an AI tool, this or that, but it has to be also kind of a wake-up call for the fundamental question: how digitally transformed am I? How is my infrastructure prepared for a transformation? Where do I stand? How much I spend, and so on.
Yeah.
Quite often I see that people still think about AI as just another legal tech tool, and they put it in the efficiency box, and it's with the innovation team. So, but actually it has a transformative effect. It will have a transformative effect on the market. Business models will have to be reviewed. So it's more than just a technology. It's a technological trend. Yeah.
And then, so what about Copilot specifically? You and I talked a little bit about that last time, and
Yeah.
I think Microsoft's ubiquity in legal really makes a good case for Copilot. I'm still not fully. The jury is still out on ROI from where I sit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that there's not sufficient ROI there. I'm not suggesting that at all. But what I do think needs to be evaluated is the level of adoption firm-wide. If a firm, and there are many firms now, I hear about them more and more every day, that are going full bore. The whole firm gets, Copilot licensing. And I think there is going to be a wide spectrum of adoption. And if everybody was on the right end of the adoption spectrum, I think it'd be really easy to articulate a positive ROI. That's not going to be the case.
Yeah.
I think it's going to vary significantly, but what sort of challenges? I mean, I know lawyers love to live in their inbox. Like, how do you get them out of their inbox and using other tools and platforms? And how will that impact AI adoption, do you think?
So it is difficult to get them out of their inbox, and we have seen that. I have seen that in the last several years, 10 years, that if you have a software which is integrated, whether it's a CRM system that you can click from your Outlook inbox, or whether it's a document management system which is again integrated. So those tools are adopted much easier than if you have to go to a separate page and log in, even if that's just 2 clicks. Certainly a Copilot is something that is a natural fit to the legal industry, which uses the Microsoft environment almost exclusively, as far as I know. But I would also not say like it's Copilot or other tools. I think we will see that firms build a portfolio of tools, and different tools will be designed for different processes, different tasks, and whereby Copilot, for example, might be the natural fit within your email communication to help draft simple answers and so on. It might be that for more complex legal tasks, you would pick another tool which has maybe a domain-specific fine-tuning, or even a domain-specific language model as an underlying model. So, and you said a couple of firms have a completely broad enterprise level rollout. I think there is a lot of you need a lot of communication training, change management, prompt training, expectation management. So I hope it doesn't happen in many firms that basically they have heard all these headlines that AI is taking over their jobs or their tasks at least, and then now they get Copilot and they test A, B, C cases, and then it is below their expectations, and they say, okay, it doesn't work. Because I have seen that in connection with earlier versions of AI technologies, like traditional AI, how we call it these days, and it can kind of eliminate the trust for a longer period. If they have negative experiences. So, but definitely it's a natural fit, and I think all the IT teams are supporting a simple and kind of infrastructure. So they are an important gatekeeper.
Yeah.
So,
How much talent, AI and machine learning talent, do firms need to have in-house in order to make this a success? Because that's a gap today, right?
yeah,
I mean,
that's
it's a gap.
definitely a gap.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
gap everywhere, though. It's not just legal. I mean,
yeah.
this is a really rapidly emerging area, and the appetite, the demand for resources is intense. So historically, law firms have not fared well in attracting talent from emerging areas of high demand emerging areas of technology. And I mean, we see it all the time with firms that want to move to the cloud. They struggle attracting and retaining the talent necessary to migrate and manage, because things operate differently there. How big a gap is this going to be and get in the way, do you think?
It will be a huge gap, and what is even more important that it might be that this gap will exist for law firms, but not so much for the clients, the in-house departments. Because at least if you look at the big companies, big clients, they have had these machine learning teams and AI specialists for several years, not because of the legal function, of course, but because of other areas of the business. But they are there, they have the talent, they have the infrastructure. And this is something that the law firms have to bear in mind, that they like to look at each other, what the other law firm does. But this time they should really look at and follow what the in-house legal departments do. Because you mentioned Copilot. I see, for example, here in Austria that in-house legal departments are getting Copilot, not because they are innovative or not because the GC is so innovative. Some of them are, some of them not. But the entire firm or the entire company, the entire bank gets Copilot. So legal is one of the departments. And this is happening while some of the law firms just experiment with one or two or three licenses at the same time. So there is already a kind of an adoption, maybe potential a difference in terms of speed. And then additionally, for those retrieval augmented generation techniques, or even fine tuning, or combining generative AI with other technologies, you need the talent. And yeah, it's not there. And also some firms don't have strong enough kind of classic innovation or legal engineering, or you name it, this kind of bridging talent, and now they want to jump on AI. So it's been interesting
It is,
case.
and I see firms now having AI specific C-level roles, right?
Mm.
Chief innovation and AI officer, or I've even seen standalone chief AI officer roles,
Mm-hmm.
which I find extremely interesting. They're not a big firm, maybe 300-400 attorneys. I don't even know if they're quite that big. That has a chief AI officer. I met her, super sharp. And they were the first ones that I saw do it. And I think it generated some really good press for them.
Mm-hmm.
But that seems like they're going to need to bring that talent in somehow. I just thought it was interesting to bring it in at the C level right out of the gate, right?
Yeah.
And you're right. Many financial services is a great example. I spent a lot of time in AML and anti money laundering and they've been using AI for years to identify patterns of money laundering activity. It's not new. And so, right, the legal departments can benefit from that underlying infrastructure, but law firms. What about prompt engineering? Are lawyers ready to learn how to engage in prompt engineering?
I'm very optimistic in connection with that, because at the end of the day, prompting is so I always say it's like giving instruction to a first day trainee. So if you are a lawyer who is a good leader in terms of, or a good manager, giving detailed instruction to your junior lawyer, explaining what it is about, explaining what the expectation is in connection with the outcome, giving some examples, do something similar, at least as a starting point with your AI assistant. So I'm optimistic, but as every change and every learning area, it is not easy. So it requires massive training efforts.
Yeah, it will be interesting. I am encouraged to see the amount of content in the form of there's a ton of legal tech companies out there that are getting funded, and maybe some not so deservingly so, just because they say AI. But we're seeing conferences. We've participated in many. In fact, I'm going to be at one on Wednesday in Chicago. So that is really helpful. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. There's so much more we could talk about. Maybe we'll have to get together and do it on another show. I know we're running out of time here, but this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you spending a little bit of time with us, and I look forward to continuing the conversation on LinkedIn.
Yeah, thanks, and it was indeed a great conversation. Looking forward to continue it.
All right, great seeing you, Andrea.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Legal Innovation Spotlight. If you found value in this chat, hit the subscribe button to be notified when we release new episodes. We'd also really appreciate it if you could take a moment to rate us and leave us a review wherever you're listening right now. Your feedback helps us provide you with top-notch content. Want to dive deeper into the world of legal innovation? Connect with us online at getinfo-.com, where you'll find additional resources and articles. You can also follow us on social media at getinfo- to stay updated on the latest news and insights in the field of legal tech and knowledge management. Once again, thank you for joining us today on Legal Innovation Spotlight, a fireside chat series hosted by InfoDash.